Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Some Parts Not Included, a podcast where three lifelong amputee friends just hang out and talk about all things amputee related. My name's Amanda, and these are my co-hosts, the Jamies. How are you guys doing this week?
I'm doing pretty good, although there has been an issue. What about you, James?
I'm good. I'm all right. I mean, I got my nub caught in the closet door and pinched it, but other than that, all good.
That's so great.
It's super red.
Ow.
Ouch.
That would hurt so
What
bad.
about you, Jamie?
You got an issue.
What's grinding your gears?
Yeah, grinding my gears. So, this past week or week before, whatever, these past couple weeks, I've been refinancing my house. And so, as you know, when you refinance, you are offered, as an example, like mortgage insurance. And so I was actually considering mortgage insurance, considering that, like I'm the only person who lives here. I'm the only one who has income in my family of me. And so I decided to consider it, right? So when the mortgage insurance specialist called me, we were talking about that. And so the life or dismemberment policy was very interesting. So yeah, wait until you hear this. So
Continue.
your life or dismemberment policy will cover if you lose your life due to something, or if you lose 2 limbs. Yeah. So I was like, well, what if I already don't have an arm? Like, what if I lose the other one? Does that count? And they're like, no, only if you lose 2 limbs in the accident. And I was like, but that doesn't make any sense. And so what really frustrated me about this is that I wanted more of the like sickness or short-term disability one and not the life one, because it didn't make sense to me to get a policy where it's like I have to lose like a leg and my other arm or both my legs to even be able to take advantage of that. Like that doesn't, like, the likelihood as well of me losing, like, so the thing is that if I lose the ability to use my left arm, 100% I feel like I should be covered. But anyway, that you couldn't do that because I don't already have my right arm. So I was like, okay, well then maybe I'll take advantage of the like short-term disability or sickness policy. But you can't do that unless you have the life one. So it was just this like big cycle of frustration because I was like, you can't alter this in any way, considering that like I am missing my arm. But it's like, how does someone write a policy where they say that you have to lose 2 limbs? Why can't it say you don't have the ability to use like 2 limbs? Like, why does it have to be you have to lose 2 limbs?
Why is losing one not enough? Like that's already a huge challenge to lose one limb. Why?
That's very interesting. That's very
I
interesting.
was so frustrated.
What if
Frustrating if you're an amputee, that's for sure.
What if you lost, so you're below the elbow, technically, right? So if you lost and amputated more of that arm and your other arm, would that count as 2? Because you were born with that as part of an arm.
And see, I don't know about this. So this is my like thing with that, my battle with this, is that losing a limb is not cut and dry. Like you can't, like, pun intended. Like sometimes you may get sick And then as a result of even maybe even years later, but even months later, as a result of that sickness and then other issues with it, you may possibly lose
Yeah.
a limb, right? Like it's not something that like sometimes is like just an automatic like accident, you lost a limb, you lost both limbs. It doesn't always happen that way, right? Sometimes even like you have to remove a limb to save your life. Like so there is just so many issues with that type of policy. And I just don't understand how policy writers like that, or underwriters or whatever they call them, I don't even understand, doesn't or aren't like, wait a second, I should consult someone who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
But
And
like
then
I get
also,
it.
like,
Well, say you lose your arm, your left arm. Can you just say, look, I had one down, now there's another. I've lost both.
And this is exactly what I asked them. I was like, so if I were to lose one, I would not be covered under this policy? If I were to lose my other arm, I would not be covered under this policy. And she repeated
this
to
is the
me,
one time I feel
Like,
like,
I have
yeah,
already lost one.
yeah.
Just say that. I've already lost one.
and she repeated to me, you would have to lose both limbs in this specific incident. So
I
also
guess
my
I
other
need,
issue is like, does it have to happen at the exact same time? It's like, what is the
oh,
timing of that? Like, how much time can go between losing one of those limbs and the other one?
I'm trying to grasp why it matters that it has to be two. Like,
Because then that would, if you still have one, then you can still do things. That's what I
That's
think
their thought
that's what I'm
process.
thinking. They're thinking.
but I mean, we know lots of people who are missing both their arms, both their legs, or a combination, whether it's three or four, even. And like, technically, they're capable of still doing things and just
Well,
adapting.
yeah,
I'm not saying it's not extremely challenging,
very
like, of
challenging.
course it is. But like, I grew up with a quad amputee, and they were capable. I don't think there was anything in my head that like, they couldn't do. Obviously it just looked different and was a lot more challenging or hard on their body, but um like, to me, but I'm trying to like grasp why that would need to be there, because to me it doesn't matter who you are losing as an amputee. I often joke, like, when they thought I had bone cancer, which I don't, but when that was an option, one of the things that got brought up was, well, we would have to amputate basically the rest of your stump that you had. And my response to that was, I don't even know how to be an amputee. And my mom laughed and had to remind me, like, yeah, I mean, you do know how, but in my mind, like, I was born with this. This is the body I was born with, so I don't know any differently. So to lose it is extremely different than to be born with it mentally, for me, right? Like, obviously there's a lot of similarities, but there's obvious things that are different. So to me, it's kind of like anybody, no matter who you are. My point being to that story is, if I were to lose the rest of my stump, like, that would make walking just that much more challenging and that much harder on my body. So why wouldn't like any amputation type count? But
Yeah.
obviously we know it's so that way it's way harder for them to pay us.
Well,
It's
and
the real
Yeah,
answer.
that's the real one.
that's the thing, right? Is it's like I was like, ooh, that's brutal. And then I was like, that in certain circles, I mean, certain places or whatever, seriously disabled, which is what they were going for in this case. I'm guessing what they were going for means both arms or three limbs. Not necessarily just two, right? So that's, like that's but
Wow.
anyway,
Okay.
that's a whole thing. But it's like,
Interesting.
why
I
does it have
know.
to be two limbs? Like what? It's like, oh, I can lose like my left leg and my right arm. Like that's a random set of limbs to lose.
Yeah.
Not in a car accident.
No, correct.
True, very true. But still on opposite sides, that's a random amount of limbs to lose. But anyway, my point is that you're right. They're just trying to avoid paying that. But to the regular person who hears that, are they like, "Oh no, that makes sense."
Oh yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, but I would be curious how an able-bodied
Yeah.
or four-limbed person, one of those
I
Normie.
just,
normies.
yeah, I just don't think that writing or putting
So
something in,
Jamie,
yes,
question for you. Sorry if I was interrupting an
it's all good.
important thought. Okay.
Fine.
Um, my question to you is, how does that make you feel, I guess, other than frustrated or annoyed? And to tie that in, like, did you obviously, like, I assumed you didn't get it, but I mean, I
I
don't
did
know,
not
like,
get it.
that deterred you from getting it though. Okay.
What it makes me feel is that the majority of things in this life are made for people with four limbs, and that there is no flexibility in a lot of situations to change that. We see this everywhere. We see this in so many situations, especially when it comes to health. We see inflexibility, and I think that it makes me feel like I'm just so odd, right? Like, inflexibility, like unable to change things just because I'm such a specific type of person. Definitely frustration. And it just makes me feel like I live in a world where I am truly sometimes an alien.
No, I get that.
We're
Yeah,
all aliens.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
But
why
yeah,
I'm
so
wearing
so
this
I think
shirt. See,
nice.
because we're
But
all aliens.
Yeah, well, we knew James was an alien from the
Oh,
beginning. That was,
absolutely.
yeah.
But
I'm not
this
from
is
Earth.
not the only situation that I've run into in my life either. So, as an example, I have another disability. Actually, it's like a health related one. I have, I have the disability tax credit. But the thing is that the disability tax credit is granted sometimes based on the amount of extra time or extra money, depending on what it is, that you spend in your life because of the things that you deal with. So, very interesting fact for me. So, I'm a type 1 diabetic and I'm also a right arm amputee, which is very, by the way, very uncommon. It is not a common thing whatsoever. And so, I spend on average every single day, sometimes up to an hour, just handling blood sugar stuff, just handling the fact that I'm a type 1 diabetic. And then I also spend more money all the time just because I'm an amputee, more money on clothes, things like that, just like specialized things or whatever, simply because of that fact. But I am only eligible for the disability tax credit one time, not two times, one time. And so it's like there is no difference between the amount that I would get as an example and then the amount that someone else would get with like, I know you can't put levels on disability, like everyone handles things differently and whatever is the case, but just like someone who maybe would not have as much trouble or spend as much time on their health that I do. And then to go even further than that, someone who is like who has no use of their limbs, maybe is paralyzed or whatever, or who has no limbs, again gets the same amount that I do. And it's like that doesn't necessarily make sense to me. And then again, another situation that I've run into as well is that as a type 1 diabetic, I live in Ontario, so I have the assistive devices program to handle both my artificial limbs and also my insulin pump. And when I was first diagnosed with diabetes, the thing that you had to do all the time was test on your fingers. And you had to prove your blood sugar by testing on your fingers. The issue with me is that I have 5 fingers, and the realistic expectation to have my fingers always in pain, because it wasn't just like one test or like 2 tests, it was 4 or 5 tests a day, right? On your fingers, 4 or 5 pokes a day on your fingers. And it's gross. I'm not going to lie to you, it hurts. It does. It hurts a lot.
No doubt. Of
And
course.
so that for me was like, oh, in order for me to have coverage with certain, like with ADP as an example, I had to do that, right? And then I also had to get 3 blood tests a year. And like some of those things, like, yeah, that's understandable. But at the same time, like getting back and forth for the blood test and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, also the fact that I have less veins that they can access because it's only my one arm, right? So it's
Right.
like,
Yep.
and then the fact that I have overuse injuries in my arm, and it's like, doesn't make it any easier, doesn't make it any better. I just run into a lot of inflexibility or the,
Yeah.
not like people are unable, or systems are unable to look at me and say like, oh, she needs very specific things. And that is inequity. That's inequity, right? We talk about equity and things like that. And the fact that there is not a specific system that can make me not have any barriers to my healthcare. That is a huge red flag. But anyway, I could go on and on about this, but these are just some of the things that I run into all the time, especially having two major health issues. I don't know if I would call type 1 diabetic a major health issue, although I don't make insulin, so maybe it is. But
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like
I
it.
think so.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's classified. Yeah, to me, anyways.
yeah.
I would take it seriously.
Have you guys run into that before? Like inflexibility with stuff like that? Wow, I've talked for quite a while about this.
Yeah, I think for me, I struggle with being like, oh yeah, I deserve that extra, right? So for me, oh, I guess I shouldn't say I'm okay with, because now that you pointed out, like I totally see your point in what you're saying, because for you, I wouldn't be okay with it. Like there should be flexibility in a situation where it's affected, like both affect you. So like for me, I could say like my car accident or having arthritis are different disabilities than having one leg. But when I'm working on, I guess like everyone just assumes because I have one leg and it's so obvious, like that's the first thing that comes to mind. But I guess in not having flexibility when it comes to those other credits, I guess I never really thought about it before in a way where I thought, yeah, I deserve that. It was kind of like, oh, I don't get it. And then I just have accepted it, I guess, maybe. The way you're putting it into perspective, like, I completely agree. There needs to be, the system's never going to be fully fair, I think, no matter what we try to do. But
No,
in your situation, like, there's an expense that comes with being diabetic that
huge.
is
Yeah.
huge. Yeah. And so that and being an amputee, like those are two very expensive disabilities to have. You should be able to utilize that and not just be like categorized, I guess, as one, or there should be, and I don't know what that even looks like, if I'm being honest with you, which is why
Yeah.
the hesitation, even as
Absolutely.
I'm talking about it, because I guess it's something that never has really
And
mentally been something I felt and I deserved, maybe,
yeah,
or
and
thought
to
about even.
yeah, yeah, and to be honest, like I've never thought about how that would be done either. I just think that there probably could be a better way. I'm not saying like I'm the expert. I'm not saying that I understand
Yeah, yeah.
the implications of doing those things, or how that's going to affect certain things or whatever. I just believe that there are more barriers to my health than need to be, because the purpose of those programs, the purpose of these things, are to remove barriers,
Yeah.
not put them up.
Yeah, kind of the irony there, eh? That like we have in order to have less barriers, we need to, I've never thought about that, like actually go through a lot more obstacles.
And I think that because I had a career where I take these things into consideration, where I've been able
Yeah,
to work to make sure that certain things are equitable, I think that maybe it pops out to me a lot more than maybe others do.
for sure. Yep.
Or just maybe simply because I have more than just I am more than just an arm amputee. I'm also, that type 1 diabetic, and have had other weird health stuff happen.
Absolutely. Definitely it would be more top of mind. I think James is like me, almost like never really thought about it
Yeah, no,
before.
not really. I mean, obviously there have been things that have been challenging for me too, but I just we're living in a four-limb world, man. They're not,
We are truly.
you know what I mean? There's just like the amount of amputees. Everything's really made for people with four limbs, and like then they, like you said, they have the disability tax credit, and there's equity programs and stuff to take advantage. But when you start breaking down levels of disability, and like it's hard, it's almost it's too much to gauge, so they put you all in one, one sack, and everyone gets the same, right? So I don't know why I chose that metaphor.
But no, but it is. that is the way that I look at it too, James. Is like, I can't fit into a box. None of us can fit into a box, right? And so
No.
in order to put us like into check boxes, that's exactly what's happening. And I get that we also don't have the manpower or the people to therefore assess every single person on a case by case basis, because
Yeah.
again, we just simply have too much of a population and not enough people to work at it,
That's right.
and not enough tax money to do it. Like, I understand all of those implications, I understand all of them. It's just a weird, like, I can't be put into a box. I'm not a box. A checkbox. I'm not a checkbox.
I'm with you. Like, I definitely think there could be change. I just don't know what that even, I've never thought about it enough to actually say, like, I have a solid solution or answer or anything like that. And again, I also think part of just who I've become, like, almost like James said, like, we're living in a four limb world, and I've always had maybe even too positive of a perspective sometimes in life. And so sometimes, I don't want to say the word entitled, almost like that sounds bad, but in my head it's almost like, well, so used to living that way, and we're so used to trying to have a positive attitude towards it,
That's right.
that we just don't let it affect us or get to us. And maybe it's because we've been ingrained from such a young age on how to have a positive attitude.
It's true. Even
Absolutely.
writing, even applying for the disability tax credit, writing that is hard because you got to be like, I can't do this, and I'm slower at doing this, and because of that, and I take more time to do this, and
It's hard to admit
I
those
got
things to yourself, I
it
think.
is, but when you look at it, it's true, right? So it's
Mhm.
Yeah.
like you have to be real. Like we all grew up with that positivity ingrained in us. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I can do anything, and if you can do anything you put your mind to, and I kind of,
Yeah.
I don't kind of still believe it. I do believe it. I do.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it takes some extra time. It might have to be done a little bit differently. There's a lot of things that are clearly going to be more challenging for us, right? That when missing a leg or missing an arm or
Mhm.
multiple limbs. But then again, yeah, like you said, Amanda, like someone who is like a quadruple amputee, that's a whole other ball game. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like we're all in the same box, and we really shouldn't be, but we are. Yeah, we're all kind of just put into the same box. We're all amputees, even though there's so much difference between being a leg amputee and an arm amputee, or like a multiple amputee and missing a leg and an arm, or like and it's just like, well, maybe I should get a little bit more tax credit for every limb I don't have. And that goes back to your like insurance policy that says, oh, you have to lose this many limbs to take advantage of it. It's like, well, why not start at one and then double it for two and triple it for three and quadruple it for
I have
four,
a,
because there's a different challenge for each level. Like it's
and I have a question for both of you, and I'm not gonna say whether this is like a good or a bad way or whatever, but like, I grew up from a generation and time period and a group of people who would say, so like, someone else that has it harder than you, and so you
Mhm.
should be grateful.
I think that all the
There's
time.
Yeah, like, so for me, I know that, this generation now, they're like, oh, don't say that, like, you shouldn't compare. But in a sense, it's made me adapt and be humble and grateful for what I have. And so for me, it was easy to keep a positive attitude, because it's like, okay, well, I could live in a country where my artificial limbs aren't covered, or, I could have
Or you
lost,
don't even get an artificial limb at
yeah,
all.
or you lost multiple limbs, or, like, there's
Or you
just
have
so
to
many.
avoid landmines daily. Like,
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? Like there's every time someone says that, yeah, it's like, oh, I'm allowed to, I'm allowed to feel pain and I'm allowed to feel bad sometimes, but really when you boil it down, it's just like we're lucky to all just we hit the geographical lottery, honestly. Like being able to live in Canada alone. I always go back to that, but that doesn't mean we're not allowed to things aren't hard for us too sometimes, and it's like, even being amputees or whatever, like, But I've
So
always tried to
essentially,
do that, to look back and be like, you know what? Like a lot of people where I'm actually kind of lucky, man, just to have what I have. You know what I mean? And to be where I just really living in Canada and like the healthcare.
so for you, do you feel it was easy to have a positive attitude throughout your whole life? Do you feel like you ever felt feelings of guilt when you didn't have a positive attitude about your disability?
That's a very
I
good question.
Yeah, I don't even know how to answer that. I've
I can
never been negative. Yeah. You go
Really?
first, Jay. I gotta think about that one more.
I would say for me, I always thought I have to have a positive attitude because if I don't, what's the alternative? Right?
Yep.
And that is always the way that I thought about it, is that there truly, in my mind, there truly isn't an alternative. As I have gotten older, though, I have realized that always constantly focusing on the positive is really annoying to some people. It's like, I have friends and stuff like that where I'm just like, oh, like it's gonna be okay, like think of this, blah blah blah, and they're just like, shh, stop, like don't. ah. But so that's always been really interesting. I would say that, like, when it came to me being an amputee, I feel like that positivity has always been there, and I don't think that it will ever leave, because again, and this is again that conversation I have with myself all the time, what is the alternative? That I sit and feel bad, like I feel horrible about
Yeah.
myself, I
And
feel like
people
I
do
can't
that
do
though.
something, and so when you start believing that you can't, then you can't, right?
So for you, it was kind of a natural
Mm-hmm.
feeling or attitude that you had in general about yourself.
See,
Absolutely.
we're all lucky to have, and
Yeah,
I don't say lucky, but we grew up. That's the only thing we've ever known, right?
correct.
Is
Yeah.
being is like, Jamie and I are born without a limb, and Amanda born without a leg. Um, it's so we've never known any different, to be positive. But in a lot of the amputee groups that I am in, and Facebook that I just joined like not long ago, because I started joining some more amputee groups. It's a lot of negative, and it's a lot of depression, and it's people who are losing their limbs in accidents. So when you it's a huge difference. And I was actually going to bring this up to you guys, that there's that whole other side to it that we kind of don't even really know. It's the losing your limb later in life side, and it's like
Yep.
that's so tough. I can't even imagine. I'm sure you could try to, because we're amputees. We could empathize with those people. Like, yeah, we know what it's like to live without a limb, but we don't know what it's like to have all four limbs and lose it later in life. And it's, in my experience, working with adult amputees,
Way harder.
way harder to lose a limb later in life than it is to lose a limb as a kid. Kids bounce back super fast, and then later in life, when you lose a limb as an adult, it's really hard. And a lot of these people that I see posting are like, just severely depressed and stuff. As you guys are laughing and like trying to hold your laughs back with it.
It's
I don't know
because
what
I
I
was
did,
like,
That,
I was like waiting for you to end, because I kept being like,
but
yeah.
I think though that in those cases, I do believe, and I mean, because I watched my grandfather go through it, and as we have spoken about,
Yeah.
I do believe it's the same strategy, because again, what is the alternative? And I
Yeah.
mean, I
Positive
think that
attitude for
I
sure.
I always think of it kind of logically in that way, is like, oh, then if I go to the other side, as my friend says, if you go to the dark side, I'm always in the dark side, but if you go to the dark side, what's that alternative, right? And it's that negative self-talk, it's that getting stuck there, and it's the not doing anything, it's the not going to work, it's the not working on your life, it's the feeling bad about yourself, it's the not leaving
I'm
your
with you,
house.
Jamie.
And
I kind of 2 points to that. One being a few years ago, I had stumbled into a situation that I was really struggling with my prosthetic leg staying on my body. And we basically felt like we had exhausted all options. And my doctor looked at me and said, Are you ready to give up? And I said, what does that even mean? He's like, you don't need to wear a prosthetic leg. That is a choice. And I said, giving up is not even in my vocabulary. Like, that option is not even option Z. It is like, we keep trying, we keep doing, or I keep suffering. Like, those realistically was my option, because in my head, it is way better to have an artificial leg that struggles to stay on my body, or the things that I'm challenged with it, than being in a wheelchair or being on crutches. Like, those are so much more challenging, that I thought, like, well, that's not right now, that's not an option on my list. So I'm just going to keep pushing the people who make prosthetic limbs, basically, like companies or prosthetists. Like, I'm going to encourage them to think outside the box, because that isn't an option for me. For me, that's that engraved in me. I think I was always that way. If, of course, it helps if you're in a very nurturing, loving environment that's supportive, and also enforcing that constantly, right? Like, my mom never, she basically was like, you can do everything, just we have to look at doing it differently. It's called we adapt. And so, to have an adult or a parent in your life
We
kind of
are adults.
always be talking like that. Yeah, well, now, but not at the time growing up. um but yeah, like, when you're growing up and your brain is developing, to have people giving affirmations to your brain, like, you can do it no matter what, I think it instills that just in you. So your brain just naturally thinks that way, right? So I think we are all blessed that we had parents and a support system, that was how it was for us. And so now here we are as adults, that is still in us. Now, it might not be with us in every subject in life, um, but it probably still lingers as far as amputee challenges go for each of us, or I'm guessing, um, of both of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not every. Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking though, like not everyone has that mindset that you are lucky to have. You know what I mean? Like some like or when
Yeah.
Jamie said, what other option is there? What's the alternative, right? And
Yeah.
that's a good point to the people that are watching, that it's like, what is the alternative? You have to turn it around. You have to try and be positive, because what is the alternative? But even still, like for people that are suffering from depression, and loneliness is
Yeah.
a big part of it too, right? Isolation, because you can't go out anymore, or you're stuck in your house or wherever you live because you're not mobile anymore and you can't move around. Um, yeah, just joining those groups really
Really helps.
opened my eyes to the fact that there's a lot going. Every time I go to talk about something like really emotional, you guys are laughing. Okay, what is happening here? You
It's a kitty. The
dark,
kitty is
sinister people.
interrupting. I was like, Jamie and I speak a language that doesn't involve verbal communication. So that is why. And it has nothing, please do
These
not.
people who lose limbs, who are depressed and lonely, and that's what gets your laughs
What
going.
what
That's what
makes us
gets.
laugh
That's
is,
what really gets you.
I would like to explain for the audience so they understand Jamie and I so much better why we're laughing at inappropriate times. Well, there's two reasons, but realistically, in the background, while you're being very emotional, is Jamie's cat just being like, meow, meow, like
Oh, is it? I didn't hear it.
interrupting you and your beautiful story, or like what you're telling us. And then that's why it's funny, because it's just like, these damn
It's.
pets always be interrupting.
Oh,
He's
I thought it
he's
was like a when you feel bad, you have a like you have a
No,
nervous thing where you laugh. It's just
I
he's
like,
do
looking at
that
the
or when
though.
you
ceiling
hear.
and meowing. Like I'm
I do. That was the second thing, James. 100%. I laugh at the
You
most.
do that, yeah, inappropriate times.
Yeah,
I've noticed.
it's actually a part of my coping, to tie it in with what we were just talking about. It's
Yeah,
part of my body's natural coping mechanism. I didn't get to pick this, but I laugh really hard at inappropriate times. And I would like to kind of tie it into something my doctor brought up to me. So, a few years back, I started to faint and have these like medical issues or whatever. And we were doing all sorts of tests, and they couldn't exactly figure it out until one day, after seeing a cardiologist, the doctor talked to me and said, "You are the most positive person I have ever met. And you probably have gone through more than anyone I have ever met. And I'm just wondering if you maybe internalize some of that because you've been engraved to think positively and you're putting your real feelings on away. Like you're not actually addressing them and it's coming out in like stress related ways where your heart is stopping." And so and that is all true. So what I started to do was I started to go to therapy, and that's when I started to learn like there are levels, kind of like what Jamie's talking about, where like you can be annoyingly positive, and I
Yeah.
definitely was at some stages of my life, because I always felt like there was a, oh well, there's always worse, and you can always look around, like you can choose your happiness. And I do still want to say that I'm not saying that you can every day and every moment. And also, you're allowed to feel more than one thing. It's just like there's this balance where you're saying, I'm not going to let the negative thoughts win, or I understand I have intrusive thoughts. Those are normal, but they just don't get to win. Or
Mhm.
you reflect, you feel your feelings, and all your feelings are valid, but I'm allowed to feel upset about something or frustrated at something while still feeling grateful for, I can be
Everything else that in your
frustrated.
life, yeah.
Yeah, like for
Yeah.
example, like I get often frustrated at our healthcare system. However, I'm also extremely grateful of our healthcare system in the exact same
It's weird, isn't it?
situation. And yeah, so and it's important to understand, and I guess through therapy, that's when I started to realize like there is a level, I don't want to say it's toxic positivity, but in a way it can become if
Yeah.
you're not acknowledging. But to Jamie's point, at the end of it, you can feel all of that and then you use it. That's how I think. Like you use that to say, what would I rather? Would I
Mhm.
rather be in a wheelchair, or would I rather be in pain with a leg? Well,
Mhm.
listen, there's pain from being in a wheelchair. Like that doesn't make it easier, it just makes the pain different. And I have a lot more freedom with having an artificial leg than I will if I'm in a wheelchair. So for me, that's when I start to say, okay, it sucks. It does. And you go through those range of emotions of, you
Mhm.
know, frustration and feeling, I don't want to say feeling sorry for yourself, but maybe there is like a bit of a pity party that's merited. And then eventually you just can't live there. You have to say, you know what feels way better is leaving the house and feeling good. And so eventually you
Yeah.
start, looking for things that make you happy outside of it. And that's different for everybody, right? So in my scenario, maybe it's I have the freedom to go out in my backyard and still garden or enjoy nature. But if I was deaf or blind, like I wouldn't be able to download the beauty of birds chirping and watching butterflies float around. And so I I choose to pick joys and little things up all around me, but that doesn't mean it has to be 24/7. Like you
Yeah.
just need to find life is a balance of shit that sucks.
Yep.
Let me understand why it makes me feel that way, because we're
Mhm.
all unique humans, so everything's going to affect us differently. And then trying to come out on the other side, like Jamie said, like, well, what would I rather? What is really your choice right now, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And I think, Amanda, you and I have had this conversation all the time. Like, it's important to feel what you feel. It's important
yeah,
to not just block that out and be like, nah, you know what? I'm good. I'm good. I can move on. I'm great. Like, it's
yeah,
important, like, and as we know from, mental health stuff, is it's important to go through those and to feel those
yeah,
and to give yourself time for those. But once you've done that, it's important to also give yourself time to, like, okay, well then now what do I do,
yeah.
what's the
And
next step?
truly, we have one life and we get to choose, for the most part, how it goes. And what we want and what makes us happy. Like, we don't, if we, something doesn't make us happy, we do not typically need to be stuck to that thing. So we can
Yeah.
usually change something and get what we want. And I'm not saying always, and it's not snap your fingers easy. I'm saying it requires probably a lot of damn work if it means a huge adjustment in your life. But I can almost guarantee that it will feel really good on the other end. And furthermore, it doesn't matter who you are, you're worthy of having like a happy, positive experience in life, and loving yourself. Because truly, if you like take that time and say, like, what makes me feel full, then you will start to feel happy. Instead of just focusing on what I can't do or what I don't have. And that can be difficult when you're grieving something. But I do think it's important that if you can't work through that, that you do seek help and assistance from those around you. For me, it was therapy. For some people, their friends are enough. Just talking to them. My friends can't help this level of messed up and crazy. So no, I kid, but I think it's important to learn. And if you haven't figured it out yet, that is totally okay. But you're worthy of exploring what that looks like and trying different coping skills to have a more positive life.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Well, they can also reach out to us. Like,
Yes.
I'm always willing and always open to messaging, texting, whatever someone needs, back and forth. So please reach out if you are struggling and want someone to talk to.
And if you don't like any of us,
Me
which would
too.
be super weird that you hung out with us for like 45 minutes and you don't really enjoy our company. But if it's not for you, there's lots of platforms and people to talk to. And just the point is never give up on yourself
Mhm.
and just keep trying until you find it. And yeah, we're
That's
here
about all
for
you.
you.
Yeah, that's about all you can do. And
Yeah. Cool. Well, that seems like a wrap on today's episode. If you have any questions for us, toss them down in the comment section below and we'll do our best to address them in upcoming shows. If you enjoyed the video, then make sure that you hit the like button as well as subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell notification so you don't miss out on any upcoming future videos. You can find us on all social media at Some Parts Not Included. And until next time, peace.
bye
Bye.
bye.